That's the one that it's on, yeah. They've turned red one.
Good evening, it's 7 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the August 23rd meeting of the Village Board. Can you hear me okay with this mask on? Okay, good. It's not my usual mask. I just washed and it's not dry yet, so this one doesn't quite fit as well, but whatever. Glad you could join us tonight. It's always nice to see people paying attention to village affairs, and we appreciate your attendance. Please join me for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have two sets of meeting minutes tonight. Were there any corrections or additions to the minutes of our July 26th meeting? Hearing none, could I have a motion that they be approved as written?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Trustee Fitzpatrick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Ballston. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Those minutes are approved. Now we've got the minutes of August 9th. Were there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Hearing none, could I have a motion that they be approved as written?
I make that motion.
Motion by Trustee Foremost. Is there a second? Second. Second by Trustee Baskin. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining and Trustee Langland is abstaining because we were not at that meeting. Minutes are approved. That brings us to mayor announcements. And if you'll bear with me, I do have several things to say tonight. Number one, we have scheduled a special workshop for Tuesday, August 31st at 6 o'clock p.m., not 7 o'clock our regular time, 6 o'clock right here in this room. That's Tuesday, August 31st. That'd be a week from tomorrow night. And we're going to be meeting with Lisa Nagel, who is the consultant that the board has hired to help us write enabling legislation for planned unit development district regulations in the village. And so Lisa will be walking us through that process and getting our input about what we'd like to see in this legislation in preparation for going back and working on a draft to present to us at a later date. So it is a public meeting. You're all welcome to join us if you're interested in planning, zoning, PUD legislation. That'll be the night to be here. I also want to announce that the annual water quality report has been submitted to and approved by the New York State Department of Health, and it is currently on the village's website and available for public review for anybody who wishes to take a look at it. I'm very sorry, sorrier than you know, to announce a whole handful of resignations tonight. First of all, Stacy Simmons has resigned as chairperson of the Park and Tree Board, and I do have her replacement for board ratification later on in tonight's agenda. Susanna Amite has resigned as a member of the Police Review Committee. She is moving out of the village. She was a big contributor to that effort, and we really appreciated her help, and I'm sorry to see her go. Nellie Moore has resigned from the Committee on the Arts. That's another position that we will need to fill. And last but not least, Connor Eversole and Trevor Eastman have resigned from the Department of Public Works. It wasn't very many meetings ago that I announced how pleased I was to have filled all those positions. And these two young men are two of the people that I just hired less than a month ago to fill those positions. They both left to go to work for Saratoga County at a higher salary. So we have advertised the position again. We have applications coming in, and we have an interview scheduled for, I think it's tomorrow, Wednesday. So we're actively trying to fill those positions and get PPW back up to full speed. I watched the video of the last meeting that I missed, and there were some questions asked then during public comment that the trustees were not prepared to answer on the spot. And so I thought I would try to answer those questions now so that whoever asked them and is interested in them gets the answer. First was the status of our water system. I think everybody knows that our water system is old. The transmission lines, some of them are extremely old. The water tank and the pumps and all that stuff is, I don't know exactly, but probably 35 years old, certainly past its useful lifetime. This system was built when the village was essentially an isolated community down in the Cateros Valley. The John Street water tank and the Lowell Street pump station were designed essentially to gravity feed the entire village. And we now have suburbanization all around us. We have several water districts in both the town of Ballston and the town of Milton that are significantly higher than the village. And we're getting more requests coming in constantly as we get more and more development around the village for additional water districts, additional water service. We've also, of course, added Colonial Hills. So now we have booster pumps in various places to provide pressure to some of these higher areas that can't gravity feed from John Street. And a study by our former engineer that was done several years ago and never followed up on suggested that if we put a new water tank up at the well field up by the airport in the town of Milton, it would be high enough up to gravity feed the entire system, including the places that we now have auxiliary pumps to provide pressure for. 5 years ago, we were told that the John Street water tank would need to be relined for roughly $1 million or replaced for roughly $2 million. Either of those would be a huge expenditure of taxpayer money, and I'm not convinced that we're justified in spending that kind of money unless we know it's a permanent solution. So I would really like to do our due diligence here and make sure before we spend that kind of money that we're spending it on something that's going to serve the needs of the village and the water system as it's currently configured. Right now, the immediate issue with the water system is that one of the pumps at the Lowell Street pump plant that fills the John Street water tank is failing. It's been getting worse and worse, and we were unable to replace it because there was no way to isolate our two pumps from each other to allow one to be removed and worked on. And the reason for that is the 35-year-old valves that were supposed to isolate the parts of the system didn't work anymore. We did replace those valves last year using a grant provided by Mary Beth Walsh's office. Now we can isolate the pumps, and we had both pumps evaluated a month or so ago and determined that both of them need to be replaced, which is another significant expenditure. Those pumps have been ordered, and we will have them installed as soon as they arrive. Hopefully that will eliminate the immediate risk that our current system could fail any day, but that doesn't address any of the larger excuse me, issues in the bigger system as a whole. The next issue that we need to address with our water system is the well field and the aquifer. We currently do not know how much water we have in the aquifer, and we do not know whether current usage is depleting the aquifer. We also have wells whose output has dropped through time that need to either be replaced or, whatever you do, fracked to increase their yield. Can we continue to add new water districts to keep up with all these requests that are coming in? We honestly don't know. Do we need new wells? We're not sure. So the board has commissioned that study, and that is happening currently. And we will get the answers to those questions. We will know what our capacity is, whether we can continue to add water districts, whether we have to add new wells or repair old wells. And then the obvious other issue is the distribution system. Is the John Street water tank a good long-term solution, or should we be spending money on a new tank in a different location? Are there other parts of the distribution system that need attention, as we're all sure there are? We're currently working on a request for proposals for that study, and we hope to get that done as soon as possible. But it's not really feasible for us to do any of these major projects until we have a good handle on the entire system and what our needs are. And so that's why, in a nutshell, nothing has been done to the water tank, but work has been done on the valves, the water pumps, and gathering the information that we need to move forward on the larger issues. The good news is that the federal COVID aid that was recently released can be used for upgrades to water system infrastructure. And so that might just save the day here as we're discovering all these expenditures that we're going to be facing in the immediate future, that we will be able to use that money to address them, in addition, of course, to what we've been able to put in the annual operating budgets. I do think, however, if we build a new water tank, that would probably exceed our ability to pay with current funds, and we'd probably be looking at another long-term bond to pay for that. So that's probably more than you wanted to know, a summary of where we are with the water system, and I hope that helps everybody to understand where we are. Another question that was raised at the last meeting was the status of our efforts to replace bad fire hydrants. We have, had 8 fire hydrants that were non-functional, and obviously that poses fire risks to the parts of the village where they are located. We did budget for that in the current budget year, and we did start replacing them, and we replaced them until we ran out of the hydrants that we had in stock, and then we ordered the hydrants to replace the others. Unfortunately, like many things that we now know about our supply chain, we're still waiting for the hydrants to come in. So as soon as they come in, we'll finish that job and replace the last of the non-functional hydrants. The third question that I wanted to address from the last meeting was about the sidewalk issue. As was pointed out at that meeting, we do have a law on the books that requires people to replace or repair their sidewalks when the village notifies them that that is necessary. They do that at their own cost, and there is a small amount per square foot that the village kicks in to help with that cost. As far as I know, that's never been enforced. Since I became mayor, we have developed and implemented administrative procedures for dealing with a variety of things that were not enforced in the past, like failure to keep the sidewalks clear of snow and putting yard waste in the street outside of the spring and fall cleanup periods, and not reading water meters. The reason I have not done anything about making people replace sidewalks is because early on, as soon as the three of us were elected 2 years ago, we made a list of local laws that needed to be revised, and the sidewalk law was one of the main ones. I did not want to go to the time and effort of coming up with procedures and forms and paperwork and making a bunch of people mad when I knew that the board was in the process of changing the law. And so that's why I have not done anything about the sidewalk issue. As you heard at the last meeting, there are other ideas being discussed right now besides enforcing the current regulations. However, if the board decides not to change the current law or to leave that part of the law intact, I will certainly develop administrative procedures to enforce it as soon as that decision is made. But right now, we're waiting for the board to decide what it wants to do with the law. I also wanted to give you a couple of various updates on other issues. One is the Village Hall. The board approved over a year ago evaluations of the structure and facades at the Village Hall. That study was completed, but then of course with COVID, we were not able to do a whole lot this past year. I reviewed the draft plans for that work last week. The request for proposals will be issued within the next week or two. The engineer in charge is on vacation this week, or it would go out this week. And some of that work may be accomplished this fall, but the bulk will probably occur next year. And that will take care of the structural issues that were identified with Village Hall, and it will also redo the front facade and the street side facade on Bath Street. So that'll be a big improvement to Village Hall. $100,000 of that project will be covered by a grant from Senator Tedisco's office. We really appreciate the support of Senator Tedisco and Representative Walsh in getting these member item funds for us. And the balance will come from the fund balance that was appropriated in this year's operating budget. So we'll be paying cash for that project. And finally, the Saratoga Avenue Sewer Project. That's the last piece of a grant that came to us from Senator Hugh Farley. Can anyone tell me when Senator Hugh Farley was the senator? He got us a grant for 5 sewer projects. None of them had been done 2 years ago. When I took office, I got 4 of them done the first year, and then we ran out of time. We tried to do Saratoga Avenue last year, but we couldn't get the workers or the parts or anything else. So that work has been bid at this point. The bid has been awarded, and I expect the work to be completed by early October. And that will finish up the 5 big sewer projects that have been on the books for quite some while. So I apologize for taking so much time. I usually try to keep my comments shorter than that, but I thought there was a lot of stuff, both that you had asked about and also that you needed to know about. that you didn't. So that's it for mayor announcements tonight. We'll move on to old business. As far as I'm aware, there's no other.
I actually would have a statement I prepared. I wanted to state in old business regarding the last 2 board meetings.
I recognize Trustee Raymond.
I wanted to address the nature and climate of public comment in the last 2 regular board meetings. One I attended and the other I watched on Facebook. I felt compelled to address the lack of decorum being exhibited and attempt to provide some clarity about possible misinformation and misconceptions that have been part of the discourse, and I believe has created a narrative that isn't in alignment with the facts. Firstly, I'd like to address the issue of decorum. It is every resident's right to express their opinion. However, please do so with the same respect and decorum that you wish to be addressed. An individual in one of these meetings mentioned our village motto of a village of friends. Let's try to act that way. Blatant disregard for decorum, disrespectful comments, and grandstanding is decidedly unfriendly. I hope moving forward we can expect a de-escalation of this behavior, as I would hate to think a police presence is required at future meetings in our village of friends. The next issue I wish to address is there appears to be a misconception that the board is not listening to the public. That is exactly what the board is doing. All the trustees on the board and the mayor ran on platforms that we're currently trying to progress. Items like improved sidewalk infrastructure, addressing the needs of DPW, and to move forward with the necessary steps to replace our aging infrastructure. We were elected by village residents based on the platforms we campaigned on. So we are listening to the public. Not just the loudest ones. I would also like to clarify the role of the village board and the administrative boards that fall under their purview. The village board makes legislation, and the other boards, like planning and zoning, administer the legislation the board crafts based on various sources and input. The administrative boards do not create legislation without board approval, just recommend, nor can they change or disregard the legislation the board creates. That is why it is so important to have comprehensive legislation to give administrative boards specific guidance, so it is not necessary for the boards to interpret the legislation because the intent is clearly defined. Lastly, I want to dispel the misconception about a village board that appears to have manifested itself. The village board is comprised of the mayor and the trustees. I'm going to repeat that. The village board is comprised of the mayor and the trustees. We work as one collaboratively to move forward the agenda we all campaigned on. No member exists in a vacuum or decides on village matters without the other board's members' majority consent. Everyone on the board brings ideas, information, and works together to develop a plan for the village. There has been concern during public comment about the status of various projects the village board has in the works, which the mayor has just addressed. But I think it's vitally important to address this by ensuring the current newsletter distributed to the residents represents the village board, and the newsletter should include current accomplishments and planned progress of the village board on various fronts, and also provide a forum for individual board members, if they wish, to discuss a particular topic or to simply have a forum to provide information to the public. I think the current newsletter may not reflect this clearly and may be feeding into the misconception that the mayor and the village boards are separate entities. And by doing this, we'll remove any public perception otherwise. I believe if we keep this in mind, we can move forward in a more respectful and collaborative atmosphere than has been exhibited in the last 2 board meetings. Respectfully, Trustee Raymond.
Thank you, Trustee Raymond. We'll move on now to new business. Could I have a motion that the budget transfers be approved?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
Motion by trustee Baskin, is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Raymond, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Budget transfers are approved. Could I have a motion that Stephen Terry, representing T-Mobile, be authorized to solicit in the village? All documentation has been received and the application approved by the building inspector and the police chief.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Fitzpatrick, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by trustee Cormos, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Motion carries. Could I have a motion that the Union Fire Company number 2 be granted permission to participate in the 9/11 Memorial Parade in Saratoga Springs on September 11th?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Raymond,
Second.
second by trustee Cormos. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed nay. That motion carries. Could I have a motion to accept the resignation of Zachary Irwin and that he be removed from the roles of the Union Fire Company number 2 and the Ballston Spa Fire Department?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Fitzpatrick. Is there a second? Second by trustee Baskin. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. That motion carries. Could I have a motion that the previously approved 9/11 memorial ceremony be amended to begin at 7:30 p.m. instead of 6 o'clock p.m. and that a rain date of 9/12 be approved?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Cormos. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by trustee Fitzpatrick. Any discussion? This is not much better. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. That motion carries. Could I have a motion that the Ribbon Cafe be granted permission to hold a cancer benefit on September 12th from 12 noon to 6:30 p.m. and also on August 20th from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. utilizing the alley adjacent to their building. A COVID plan has been submitted and proof of insurance has been provided.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Raymond. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by trustee Fitzpatrick. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. That motion carries. The next item of new business is a discussion of alternative means of viewing meetings. I believe, was it you, trustee Baskin, who asked for this to be on the agenda? You want to introduce the topic for us?
Sure. Well, basically, it's reintroducing the Zoom format that we had, that you guys had during COVID. And the advantage is you don't, if people are viewing remotely, don't have to be on Facebook. You don't have to be a Facebook subscriber, but also you can participate, not just watch. So it's a good way to expand participation in these meetings. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion and hopefully talk about what the next steps are for moving that forward and seeing if we all agree with that. The other piece of that I'm hoping we agree to is I think it would be helpful to not require pre-registration at the meeting, for the meeting, like the day of, but allow people to, after they come home from work, remember there's a board meeting and be able to just sign right up at that time, just to keep it as open and accessible as possible. I recognize there have been some incidents, one incident in the past, but I think if we monitor the Zoom, then we can control that. But I really think it'd be helpful to not require pre-registration. In other towns, they do allow just people to sign in and join as they can, and they've been able to manage the situation okay.
I would just raise one logistical issue. When we were doing Zoom, we were all at home with our own laptops. if we brought our own laptops in here and put them on the desk in front of us, we'd have all sorts of issues with feedback and sound and so forth. And I think if we put one laptop way over there, we probably wouldn't, nobody would be able to hear us. So it's not clear to me exactly how we would do that.
There are other ways of doing it. I mean, I've participated, we're a hybrid meeting, and I don't know, how difficult is the technology, but we could get a large screen television, put it up on the wall here. We could see, interact that way, and then they could see us, because that's the way, I was at a meeting last month, and they had a, big screen. You could see all the people online, and, they can see you from the cameras, and that way, it's not a laptop to interfere. So I don't know if we can set something up like that.
So is the thought that these cameras that we currently have now can't be connected to a laptop that's connected to Zoom?
They can be.
They can be.
There is a
So
plug-in
that's
recorder.
only one laptop, correct?
True.
Yeah, but that would be for the person monitoring, but I think you could also project it onto a video screen. What that person sees
Right.
in front of them, and then you could see all the people, when they come on, just like we did with Zoom.
Have you looked to see what the other communities that have that, how much they invested in that? Because I do know I talked with the other towns around who do have that hybrid model, and they're investing a couple of tens of thousands into it.
I also would be concerned about the expense, and I would be further concerned about the expense if we're doing it here, which is not a dedicated space and not necessarily where we're going to be forever.
Well, I mean, if it's a screen, you mount the screen on a screen, then, so I just think that would be the best, but I perfectly, 100% agree with Ben on the ability that we need to give people the ability to not just view remotely, but to participate. Because I just got an email from somebody, saying, oh, I could not, do I need a code? And I said, oh, well, I can stream. But not everybody wants to be on Facebook, so we have to have another platform. And people should be able to interact and ask a question and speak, not just the people who show up here. Particularly with COVID potentially getting a lot worse, we may be, hopefully they'll let us go back home to do it, but if they don't, we hope, we may be looking at an empty room because people don't want to come in here.
I guess the other thing too is, do we necessarily have to have video interaction with the folks that aren't here if we provided audio, as in a speaker from the laptop, so that we could at least hear their questions? That would be feasible. We don't necessarily need to have a video, because a lot of the folks just put up a static picture anyways when we're on Zoom. So, yeah.
Well, according to the open meetings law, we maybe don't have to see them, but we have to be seen, people have to be seen, and we're supposed to be heard.
Right. Well, that's the cameras would take care of that if they were tied in.
Well, that might be a good solution, and cost less.
Yeah, and we're basically talking about running it from one laptop, essentially, as long as we had a speaker that could amplify the sound of the, you could plug in, or a Bluetooth speaker or something of that nature, that you could plug into the audio, so when someone does speak remotely, everyone here as well can hear it. So I don't know if there may be a slight feedback issue, but those probably technicalities could be sorted out, technical aspects.
Well, it's also possible for them to use the chat function to ask their questions or make their statements.
Exactly.
Have somebody else read it.
Yeah. So that would be feasible. We wouldn't necessarily have to go all in on a huge, technical investment. From what the mayor said, is that this isn't our permanent location, and yes, we could always relocate the stuff, but there's also wiring and everything that would have to be redone, which is, a repeated expense. So I think at least that would be a good experimental thing to do, given the current, in another couple of months, booster shots or whatever else, we may be taking the mask off, not that, you know, there's nothing to it.
So even then, I think this is a
Yeah.
new service that people
Yeah.
almost expect now. I mean, it's proven, it's shown that it can work. We can do things remotely, and so it's somewhat of an expectation, you know, and I think a desired service.
Oh, I absolutely
Even if the
agree.
COVID goes away, it would be
Yeah.
good to pursue.
There's been a different demographic, you know, because people who have young children and people who may not be able to get here for one reason or another are able to attend the meetings and provide input and get feed, you know.
Yeah.
Also know what's going on. I think, you know, a Zoom or an interactive meeting is gonna be the new normal. I don't think we're gonna get around that.
Well, hopefully when we have a permanent meeting spot, we'll
Yeah.
equip it well.
Right.
But I see this as a temporary deal. Trustee Fitzpatrick, you're the only one who hasn't said a whole lot.
No, well, I absolutely agree that we should do it. I think it's all it's a logistical problem, and believe me, that's beyond me, all of that, any of that. But, the one thing, if we're gonna say, and I think, you know, Zoom works, I think, as long as they can see and hear us. I have seen, I think in the town of Milton, they do Zoom and they do it with a laptop. So I think it can be done. The only thing is that I would be, I also think another issue should be checked out, which is that we have enough, bandwidth in the library to have those many lines coming in.
That is a concern, because
Yes.
the bandwidth that we're on right now is not what the library uses upstairs. So that is a concern that we're trying to look into.
Okay, well, having heard essentially a consensus from the board that this is an approach that we would like to take, I just asked the treasurer, and Trustee Fitzpatrick and I can both plead old age and not wanting to tackle something like this, but we have a very young person sitting here.
Does the village have an IT?
We do.
Do you have IT?
On contract,
Yeah.
So
hourly,
we could consult with them?
hourly, we pay them by the hour, yeah. But I've asked the treasurer to price the components of such a system and investigate the feasibility, and we'll get on it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That brings us to the resolution for resumption of mask requirements. And I'm going to read this resolution before I ask for a motion. This is resolution 21-3. Whereas the Village of Ballston Spa issued a memorandum to all department heads, chairs, and members of all boards and committees regarding the requirements for wearing a mask during this current period of substantial or high transmission of COVID-19 in Saratoga County, which policy was originally dated August 5th, 2021, and has been updated on August 19th, 2021. And whereas the village board seeks to endorse this policy as it may be updated or extended from time to time, now therefore it is resolved that during the period of substantial or high COVID-19 transmission in Saratoga County, the village board is taking precautionary steps as itemized in the policy in order to protect the public, employees, volunteers, and board members within the village. And it is further resolved that the policy will remain in effect until such time as the policy is extended, modified, revoked, or otherwise changed. And it is further resolved that all measures as set forth in the policy are necessary as a result of the COVID-19 public emergency, and more specifically, the presence of the Delta variant within our community. And these steps are necessary to protect the public health. And it is further resolved that the enforcement mechanisms as set forth in the policy will be applied to any individual or individuals who refuse to comply with the provisions of the policy and this resolution. And the policy to which the resolution refers is a memo from me to department heads, chairs, and members of boards and committees, which was revised August 19th, specifically to add to the public meetings section of that policy a new sentence that says, anyone refusing to comply with these requirements will be asked to leave the meeting, and failing that will be cited for trespassing by the Ballston Spa Police Department. So that's essentially the only change. The memo previously on August 5th just said everybody had to wear masks in public meetings and employees had to wear masks when they were not in their cubicles and so forth and so on. So that's the only new thing in the memo. And that's the policy that's on the agenda tonight. Could I have a motion to approve Resolution 21-3?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Trustee Fitzpatrick, second by Trustee Baskin. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. That motion carries. And the last item of new business, could I have a motion to ratify my appointment of Jared? Oh no, that's not the last item of new business, I'm sorry. I added one. To ratify my appointment of Jared I. Colucci to fill the vacancy on the Comprehensive Steering Plan Committee.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Trustee Cormos, is there a second? Second by Trustee Baskin. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries. I'm going to bring up the other item of new business under other business because I didn't get it on the agenda in time when the agenda went out. So that brings us to the consent agenda. Would any trustee like any item removed from the consent agenda before we consider it? In that case, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Trustee Raymond. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Cormos. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. That brings us to trustee liaison reports. Does any trustee have a report for us tonight? Trustee Cormos.
Two things. Park and Tree Board is going to be having a pre-kickoff meeting with Davy Resources, the consultant that's going to be working on the tree grant. And at that meeting tomorrow night, we should be getting from them what date they will be on site here. They will be here for a few weeks. You'll see them out on the streets, measuring trees, noting what's the condition of the trees, etc. As soon as we have the date, we'll post it on the website and Facebook so everyone knows that the people walking around with vests, what they're about. And that'll be, about 2 or 3 weeks that they're on site, doing the inventory for the tree grant. On the bicycle pedestrian master plan, we finished the existing conditions. They finished most of the public comment, and they're now working on designs and solutions to our pedestrian and bicycle and link to the Zim Smith. And they'll have a preliminary report and a public meeting for everyone to comment on their recommendations. So that'll be coming up probably the next month. That's it.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports tonight?
The Committee on the Arts is going to be meeting, and they invite the public September 1st at 7 p.m. in the library. And I know they're working on an art project, community art project with BACC involving planters and plants around town.
Okay, do you know if they're aware that they have to call the library to get on the schedule for this room?
They've had meetings here before,
Okay.
so I'm assuming it's a regular. They'll have one in October, November.
Okay.
So they had one in July.
They probably did then. We've had a couple of times when people didn't realize that and thought they could just schedule this room. It's a conflict.
One other thing just to share, the ice skating rink, so school is not building this year.
Right.
So it is possible to stay down there again The school is still researching the whole liability thing. I guess they covered it in past years. It's something for us to think about. If the school doesn't want to do that, do we want to do that? Apparently BARC does not, they don't consider it their program, and currently they're not interested in necessarily making it their program. So I'm going to talk more with them about that, but I'm waiting on the schools to see which way they want to go.
Yeah,
I know sorry.
I think you need to talk to the school district because the original agreement between the school district and the village for having the ice skating rink in the first place did specify that the school district covered the liability.
Okay, they did cover it, yeah.
Which
So
makes
hopefully they'll
sense because
continue.
it's their property.
Right.
So it's hard for me to imagine how we would cover liability for something that happens on their property.
Okay. So, and the volunteers who currently run it say they strongly prefer having it stay where it is.
Oh, yeah.
And they may not continue with it if it moves. So hopefully we can continue this year.
Are you trying to get in touch with the school district on
I've been, I'm waiting on them to. I mentioned to them the question of liability, and the assistant superintendent was going to get back to me on that, but he hasn't yet.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
make sure they understand that it's their property.
Right, yeah, they know that.
And we do have a copy of the original agreement, although it's so old. I doubt that it would do a whole lot of good, but that precedent does exist.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other liaison reports? All right, moving on to other business. I notified the board that this would be coming, so it's not on your agenda, but they all are prepared for it. Could I have a motion to ratify the mayor's appointment of Mike Tower as chair of the Park and Tree Board to fill the unexpired term of Stacy Simmons?
I'll make that
Motion by trustee Fitzpatrick,
second.
second by trustee Cormos.
Stacy's not leaving the board. It's
Any
just,
discussion?
yeah, she's not leaving the board. She's
No.
just leaving the
She's
position
resigned
as
as
chair. Right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify
Yep.
that.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed nay. That motion passes. That's the end of our,
I have some other business that I'd like to, I guess, to put in. There was some question at the last meeting about what other municipalities were doing with sidewalks and, improvements. And the two municipalities mentioned was the city of Mechanicsville and the village of Corinth. So since the last meeting, I've spoken to people in both those municipalities. I talked to Mike Sieber, Commissioner of Accounts, and the city clerk. And he explained that for sidewalks, they had a program in 2009, which they are redoing this year again. And that was a program where they don't actually contribute anything towards the sidewalks. But what they did is they went out for a contract with a firm to do the work in the city at the request of residents. So if you wanted to do it, you didn't have to go searching for your own contractor. They got, sort of a group price for that. And in 2009, they had approximately 50 properties take advantage of that. Also, they also offered to finance the cost. So if it costs, $5,000 or something, you could finance it and pay it out over 4 years. So that made it a little easier for people to do it. But the really interesting thing in talking with Mr. Sieber is that he revealed to me that they have obtained $25 million in infrastructure grants over the last 10 years. And through many of the programs that we're looking at, bridge replacement, a good part of their improvements on their sidewalks was funded by grant money. So, sort of lessons learned. I think, we want to be able to do the same thing. So in the village of Corinth, I talked to Nicole Colson, she's the clerk treasurer. Just by way of comparison, you know, we have about 5,400 people. Mechanicville is actually a little, but it's actually a little smaller than us. And Corinth is about half the size of Ballston Spa. So in Corinth, when I asked her what do they do with their sidewalks, she said, we've always fixed them. They've taken it on from the beginning. They also plow all their sidewalks, the village. So I was like, you do? Their expenditures, annual expenditures for sidewalk repair is like $10,000 because they kept up all these years. Now, I was impressed with Mechanicville's, you know, ability to gain grants. Well, Corinth outdid them. They have raised $40 million in the last 7 years and completely redone their water and wastewater infrastructure. Yeah, so there's big money out there. One of the things they did is they hired a number of years ago to do an income survey, which we are just completing. And it showed that they were, quote, a hardship community. I believe our income survey will also show that we are a hardship. And so, you know, the mayor described doing some upfront analysis of our water system. I believe, you know, essentially the same thing should be done for our sewer system if that still needs, there's still pipes there that need to be replaced.
We resubmitted that grant application.
Yeah, we didn't get the grant. I think it would be a wise investment for us to take some of our fund balance and get those studies done, because there's big money. There's going to be even more money coming out of Washington for infrastructure, and we should be prepared to apply for that money. So that's the answer for Mechanicville and Corinth.
Okay, is that it?
Yep.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to public comment. I'll open the floor and remind anyone who wants to speak to please start by giving us your name and address. And I think that camera is set up so that you need to go stand like 6 feet in front of it in order to be on the tape.
Where am I standing?
6 feet in front of that camera right now.
You're fine there if you want to stand there. Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Still wear a mask, right? I gotta keep the mask. Can't. All right, you can hear me. It's Frank from 7 Union Street. I was here at the last meeting, and
Scarpinato?
thanks, Scarpinato, yeah. Hi, Mayor Larry. And, you know, very interesting that you brought that up, because when I was back there listening to you on the water, the county, how much water does the county's part of the village, I mean, in the village, they use a lot of, don't they use our water? So why does why doesn't the county, why can't we do something with the county and collaborate? Why, they have a county water line, why can't we, you know, I don't even know where it's, you know, how it's piped in and whatever, but grant money, or the county, why isn't the county helping the village with the water situation? You know, I guess I'm getting off track, but I mean, right, because the village water system you're saying is not in good shape. Why can't we ask the county for help? They have their administrative offices in the village. They've got the fair, right? They use, maybe not this year, but they use, how much water do they use for a week?
That's different. That's the agricultural society. That's not the county.
All right, but still, why?
But the county does use our water, and they do pay their water bill.
But they should help the county seat, and they're using our water, and we have to upgrade the water system for them to use. The county should be helping with that. There's something that should be done.
I don't want to put too fine a point on it, Mr. Scarpinato, but the county board of supervisors is composed of the supervisors of the towns in the county. There are no representatives from the villages in the counties. So the villages have very little pull with county-wide decisions. We frequently get left out of things when they're making decisions about dividing stuff up, and this town gets this and this town gets that. And where's the village?
But I mean, case in point, who's it falls? I mean,
We asked the county for assistance on a variety of occasions, on a variety of things, and sometimes they're very helpful. They've been helping us this week with a sewer pumping station problem that we had, because they had the equipment and the expertise that we didn't have. But as far as I know, we haven't asked them to help us fix the water system.
okay, so is that something that can be done, or I say, you know, listen, this is where we're at. I mean, you're going to assess the tank and the distribution, right? It's like with your heart and your veins and your arteries and your blood. What is the village without water, right? It's the bloodline of the village. We're talking sidewalks where, honestly, I don't care about sidewalks right now. I don't care about water. I mean, my wife's a dentist in town, and without water,